Hello there everyone, welcome back to another video about the One Piece card game. Today I'm going to be continuing my coverage of OP03, Pillars of Strength. This is going to be my deck profile for Green Kid in this format. It's Film Kid, so we've got a lot to talk about here, but firstly, before I really do get into it, if you're interested in competitively focused One Piece TCG content, you should subscribe to the channel. 70% of you are not subscribed, probably more, given the context of this video, so you should hit that button. I would appreciate it. Also, if you're interested in in-depth guides to various different decks that I cover here on the channel, you can check out my Patreon linked in the description. These include things like matchups, really in-depth understanding of like the strengths and weaknesses and why you want to play something, more meta understanding, sort of stuff like that. So if you want to get a sample, you can check those out on my channel, but please do check out that Patreon. It helps support the channel, helps fund new equipment and stuff like that, so I would really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and jump into the video. We are talking about Green Kid. So this is, for those of you who are OGs to the card game from OP01, you will remember this guy as an absolute meta-dominating threat. And whilst he's definitely fallen from grace relative to how good he was back then, he's still quite a contender. Film Kid is an interesting deck because it's kind of only playable because it's a very hard counter to the three best decks in the meta, which are Zoro, Ace and Whitebeard, particularly Whitebeard. This just has a very, very good matchup into those decks, and as a result, it's sort of gained prominence from that. Something I do want to provide, like context-wise, is this deck only really took off in Japan in a trios format when everything you played against was going to be red. So I'm not convinced this is necessarily the best meta call in the English format. We will need to see. I think there's definitely some consistency issues with this deck. But anyway, let's go ahead and just talk about the list because it's actually very, very straightforward. This is going to be a really quick analysis. So we play 4 copies of Bonnie. This is to help you find your supernovas. What are your supernovas? Well, we want to be finding Zoro, we want to be finding this Luffy, and we want to be finding Punk Gibson. Those, and also Bartolomeo. So those are the supernovas that you can find. And depending on the stage in the game, you're going to want different ones, but most of the time you are going to be wanting to try and find that 7-drop Luffy, because playing that on curve is kind of the only reason this deck can compete. 4 copies of Chopper, this is literally just a 2k counter, you're never playing this. 2 copies of Barto, this is really good because it essentially lets you turn your 7-cost Film Luffy into a 7-cost Kid. Obviously, that Barto is going to get removed almost immediately, so you kind of only get to use it once, so it is significantly worse than Kid, but the fact you are playing out stuff for free kind of does make up for that. So that, and you're playing it because it's also quite versatile because you can just untap any film stuff, so it can let you protect units you really want to protect, for example, like a Nami or like a Zoro. 4 copies of Scratchman and Pooh, I forgot to mention, sorry, this is another thing you can search off Bonnie. This is just, again, as a 2k counter, if you want that. 4 copies of Izo, again, another 2k counter, you've got to play some quantity of them, and you can play it to just tap down one of your opponent's 4-cost or lowers. 3 copies of Usopp, this is just a vanilla, 3/5. Vanillas are quite valuable in the OP03 format, but it's also valuable because you can play it off of a Brook, and you can play it off of Monkey D. Luffy. 4 copies of Nami, this is kind of, if you don't see Nami, these games go very, very badly. You need to see Nami because you need to be plussing constantly. You need to be abusing the plussing capabilities of this deck, and if you're able to just constantly hit those top 3 searches, you're in a really, really good position. But obviously, a bit of an RNG reliant card, but it is very, very powerful. It can find your whole film package. 4 copies of Brook. Brook's really good because it can just play out your Nami or your Usopp. So if you play off Luffy, you can play out Brook, and then you can play out Nami from that, so you just made a board from nothing. And that's sort of the ultimate play that this deck really wants to be doing. And if you do get to do that, you are in a very, very, very powerful position. 4 copies of Zoro. This is just a good vanilla play. It's a 6k. It's really nice to play off Luffy. You establish a lot of stats for only 7 Don. Yeah, just generally very, very good. 4 copies of Frankie, this is a 5/7. 5/7s are just really scary, really difficult to deal with. It's kind of always just going to hang around unless you're against black, basically, and you are going to be able to threaten board very, very effectively with this card. And of course, 4 copies of Monkey D. Luffy. This is the centerpiece of the deck. It doesn't really function if you don't see it. That's why you've got the maximum number of searches for it. You've got Nami plus Bonnie. You can slam this down, play out a board, and then start beating your opponent down through sheer value of stats. 4 copies of Paradise Waterfall because fundamentally restanding Luffy with Paradise Waterfall is very, very powerful, and 4 copies of Punk Gibson because it is very, very good in this format. There's a lot of 4-cost or lowers, like a lot of 4-cost or lowers in the format because of red, so this really does let you just start tapping them down and just clearing into them and constantly just destroying your opponent's board, ruining their hand of resources before you kill them over the course of a couple of turns. So that is Film Kid. Overall, as I said, I think it has its place in the format. It is meant to counter red. That is the purpose. I also apologize for my camera just acting up right now, but we're at the end of the video, so we'll move on. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, let me know what you guys think of Film Kid. Please do check out the Patreon in the description. You can help sort out whatever the hell's going on with my camera right now. And if you enjoyed this video, like it, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.